Good evening and welcome to Beware of Spoilers. I am Adam. I realize I probably should have explained this here and not in the episode I just recorded because I recorded The Last of Us first and now I'm going back and recording Doctor Who. I should have done it in the reverse order so that way I could explain it here. This would have gone up Sunday, but I had lost my voice, so we moved it until I had regained my voice, and now here we are having regained my voice. And we're here today to talk about Doctor Who, Episode 3, which I do not remember the name of the title of. I remember last week's episode was Lux. This week I was very intrigued by this episode. Because one of the things that Doctor Who has done historically well is sci-fi horror. Um, it's one of the things that has always kind of worked with the show. It's a very light horror. We're not dealing with anything tremendously scary, but they always do it, and they do it well. And this episode takes us back to an episode from the 10th Doctor's turn, back in season 4, when Catherine Tate was a companion as Donna. They went to a spa planet that you had to travel everywhere by spaceship or car or something because the radiation on the planet was lethal. So there was a creature that possessed people. The episode's called Midnight, and I remember the episode once it was described. It's like the episode Midnight. It wasn't what's it called? It wasn't something that it took a while for me to remember what it was, and then when they said what it was, I was like, oh, the one that Donna's not in that much because I know this is blasphemous, and I know a lot of people can disagree with this. Don't particularly care for Donna um, as a companion. She's my least favorite of the first run of Russell T Davies' companions, and in this episode, the Doctor and Belinda end up on this new planet, and there is this, it looks like a military base, and it turns out that there's a monster here that's killing people, and it's hiding behind people, and it turns out the planet is actually Midnight, several 100,000 years in the future. And I think that what the episode does well is it plays with that idea. I don't think this is as good as Midnight, and I would say that this is probably of the 3 episodes so far of this season. This is probably my least favorite of them because it's like, yeah, it's doing horror, but it feels the most paint by numbers of the 3, where it's like, okay, there's a monster here, the monster's killing people. The Doctor has to figure out why the monster's killing people and how it works. Oh, look, the Doctor figures it out. Great, day saved. Let's move on. Um, but not really here because they don't, you know, he doesn't really, it's not quite as successful as it usually is. So, and I think that like it's cool how the monster works. It's cool, that we're tying it back to this other episode and all of that. But I think the thing that's most intriguing is we've been seeing a lot of callbacks this season of the show, um, to past seasons. So we had this as a callback to Midnight. Um, in the last episode, we had it where they break the fourth wall and they go in and they're out in the real world and they're talking to everyone. And they talk about Blink with the Weeping Angels and all that. The guy's wearing the fez, the other one's wearing the Fourth Doctor scarf. Um, Belinda's thing here, being tied to this alternate version of herself from the future, feels kind of like what they were doing with Clara, or however you pronounce it. I know they pronounced it Clara, but I think that could just be British accent. Um, it it feels all very not retread, but kind of like an intentional retread. And what I mean by that is, it feels like we're going through past seasons of the show, and it feels like we're doing kind of a greatest hits tour of like the Doctor's you know, things that he's dealing with. Like the last season, I mean, they introduced what's it called? They brought back Sutek, the god of the dead, the god of death, who he faced off against in the Fourth Doctor. Here, we're facing off against another recurring enemy, and these are not facing off against the same enemy over and over again. Because if that were the case, we probably would have seen the Cybermen by now, or the Daleks, or something like that. We probably would have seen that, and that hasn't happened, which is interesting. Do I think we get through this entire season without seeing either? I doubt it. I think we will see them at some point this season, because I think what we're dealing with here, and I've been saying since last year, And by the way, bravo to them for not making us wait a long time, which is part of the reason why I kind of dropped off Doctor Who was these long hiatuses. But bravo, getting us back to this point where we have things happening, um, in reasonably short order, where we're not sitting here waiting forever. Um, so good for them on that. But the idea that I think what we're dealing with is the the God above all, because we've been dealing with these abstract, villains over the course of these two seasons. Maestro, Toymaker, Sutek, Lux. We're dealing with these grand gods of abstract concepts: music, death, light, um, what was it? Games, things like that. I think that the one we're dealing with, who's going to be the overarching bad guy, is going to end up being writing. And I think that this woman who keeps showing up, Mrs. Flood, is that character, and that's why she keeps showing up. And I think that is where this show is going to end up leaving us with this character. And I think to that end, I mean, she's clearly, I'm sorry, I still have a little bit of a cough. She's clearly pulling the strings to some degree. She's clearly up to something, but it's unclear what. And I think that the destruction of the Earth, as we've been alluded to, is tied to her. So what is it that she's doing that's causing the destruction of Earth? And I think all of this is kind of an interesting situation to put us in as the audience, because it is this mystery that we get to unravel. And I think that having her be the writer who is, in the way that like Stan Lee was like the god of the Marvel universe, he above all, as the writer who has that level of control, that's a really great kind of postmodern threat. I think I said that last week. Um, but this idea that this character keeps showing up, and we keep kind of going back to these villains, and not in a, like I said, not in a where, oh, the Weeping Angels are back, which has happened quite a few times. You had Blink, you had the Angels Take Manhattan. I feel like there was another one in there. Um, who was it? Like the Silence showed up quite a few times. Um, these are his villains. And there's a really funny situation that this show could end up with. And it's like, look, the show hasn't been picked up for season 3 yet. It has not. And I think a really funny way, possibly, for Doctor Who to go out would be for the bad guy to be a writer who's trying to blow the fans and make them and do the fan service the fans want. Like, clearly Mrs. Flood knows she's in a TV show. Clearly the gods know they're in a TV show. So what better way to end this and possibly go out on than to have it be like this thing that's beloved got destroyed by a bunch of overzealous fans who believe that their opinion matters over everything else. And that is manifest by a god who is the writer of the show, who dictates reality, and is sitting here trying to appease that fan base. I think that could be really funny. And a real great meta end to this. So how do you do it? You show the fans that they don't know what's best all the time. Because like I said, those three from the last episode, I think they're coming back at some point. But I do really enjoy what they're doing here, even if this episode was a little lackluster. Next week we get Ruby back, which, um, you know, could be cool. Because like I said, Ruby grew on me. It's not like Belinda. I immediately was like, this character's great because she's so different from the other companions. It took a little bit for Ruby to grow on me, and I think it's good that she's coming back next week. We'll see what that entails, but I'm really interested to see where this show goes from here. Because I think that as we build toward this bad guy, who is Mrs. Flood and how does Mrs. Flood, you know, fit into all of this is a really interesting question. Even if this is just 2 consecutive seasons of them doing, and that's the other thing too, is that it's like even the conceit of peppering this in all through the season is it's back to season 1 with Christopher Eccleston. It's not really season 1; it's season 1 of the revival with Bad Wolf in every episode. Season 2, um, Vote Saxon. Was that season 2 or was that season 3? That was season 2, I think, with Vote Saxon. All over it, where it was the Master was trying to become Prime Minister. Um, was it? That may have been season 3. I don't remember. Was it season 2? It was season 2 because what? No, it didn't bother me now. Either way, one of the seasons they did that, and they would lay it out, and that's the thing is that they're doing all the things that they know people like. And what is it? Who is the real bad guy? Us, the viewer, which is a really interesting idea if they go with this. I'd be real because I don't think the other interesting thing is there's no other TV show that's really uniquely situated to do that because you need a show with a long legacy that's been on for a long time, and this is probably the longest running or one of the longest running shows. And you also need to have that paranormal metaphysical aspect of it to have it where that would work. And again, I don't think there's another one that could do this except maybe Star Trek. And I think that this is a really interesting situation to put everyone in. But we'll wrap up there for today. Doctor Who airs on Saturdays on BBC and on Disney Plus. We'll be back next week with the next episode. We've been doing The Last of Us, and if you want to go and donate to our Ko-Fi so we can do other cool things, you can go to ko-fi.com/MWP News or go to MWPnews.com and click on the little button at the bottom of the page or on the most recent article. But we'll wrap up there, and until our next episode, have a great rest of your week.